So we shall get started. Okay. Hello, everyone. This is Prakash Pathak, and welcome to Devpost AMA. And this is going to be a winners AMA, and the winners are going to tell the story of how they won a hackathon. And today I'm going to be your host, and I'm going to MC this. And I am Prakash. I take care of communities in our home of hackathons, Devpost. So we're going to start with Lauren, Abraham, and Dustin telling about themselves and what do they do and how about more about themselves ahead. So Lauren, if you just start this.
And I am an Android engineer. I've been working on that for about a year and a half now. I graduated back in 2020 in the middle of all the pandemic fun. And for my hackathon, I entered the Square Unbox hackathon and made a project called Mercantile that allows crafters and people that make items that don't have a storefront to be able to sell their items from storefronts and have all the payments taken by that store automatically facilitated through their store account.
And Abraham, over to you.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Abraham. I'm an engineer, and I like to build things. And for this hackathon, I participate in mostly AWS hackathons because I'm comfortable working with AWS and I can, easily get going with that. So for this hackathon that I participated in, it was called AWS Graviton. And the idea was to build things on the new generation of CPUs like ARM64 on AWS. And I had two basically applications built for that. One, a new one, which I'm not going to talk about, and the second one is Township Canada, which a side gig that I have. I built it as a side project. Now it's sort of a micro startup, if you will. So for that, I migrated all the backend, front end, and everything to and the database to Graviton-based instances, and what Township Canada does is to allow users to convert legal land descriptions to geographical coordinates and places. And in Canada and the U.S., there's a survey grid system that divides the land into different parcel size. I'm not going to get into that. It's sort of complicated, but it's just doing geocoding and reverse geocoding. So yeah.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. And Dustin, if you just tell us about yourself, what do you do?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Dustin. I'm a data engineer, back-end engineer, currently working on mostly IoT projects in my day job. I also entered the Graviton hackathon, and I also made an app that was sort of geospatial as well, actually. So the app was just called Tiles. What it does is it uses that next generation of processors that Abraham was describing, and it hosts a database on one of those instances and allows users to query OpenStreetMap, so map data, and render that data into their browser, all using a database on that processor. Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Wow, that's pretty interesting actually. But there's something I wanted to ask you on a very general level. So are you guys a good developer while you are participating in a hackathon, or are you guys a good developer in your day-to-day job? What do you feel you are at your hustling at your best? What, if you have to choose between these two, what is the one? You can be honest. Yeah, it is getting recorded, but yeah, it doesn't have to be honest, right?
Since this is being recorded, definitely my day job. I think that it's nice because with hackathons, you have sort of the way to maybe try some stuff that's a little bit unusual and might not be 100% best practice. It might be a little weird, but I don't know. It's different. It's you can be more exploratory than maybe I would be in my day job.
And what about you, Lauren?
Yeah, I would second that 100%. Oh, yeah, sorry. To say, yeah, pretty much the same thing. I love what I do in my day job, and yeah, it's great. But I love the flexibility of hackathons to just be able to kind of experiment, and maybe if it's a little you're not really sure it's going to work out enough, that's fine. You can just have fun with it and explore any ideas that you might have. So I think it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, if I'm, so I think for me it's a great learning opportunity too. Like if I want to, try a new technology, for example, or play around as Dustin and Lauren mentioned, a new experiment and idea. It's a good opportunity, and there's a deadline, and that's the nice thing about it because I have a Trello board of ideas, so I don't know what to take on. And then when there's a hackathon and there's a theme, so I know what to do, and then I just pick it up. I have 2 months, I get it done, boom, move on to the next. So I think that's the good thing about hackathon that I like.
Wow, this is pretty amazing now. Like we are opening up on how we actually do a hackathon. And there is a fun thing I feel about hackathons is that the developers used to take 3 weeks to just move an icon. And in hackathons, in 3 days, they just build a complete thing from scratch. So that's pretty interesting in hackathons, like the level of hustle which is required in the hackathons. And now moving on to the next segment, we really want to know more about the projects you have done so far in AWS Graviton and the Square and Box Hackathon. So Abraham, if you just start with telling about the project you have done on AWS Graviton, and you can just give us a few brief about it, and yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So I've done 2 projects. You're talking specifically about Township Canada, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So as I mentioned, that's basically a web application that it's like a Google search for geospatial data. So if you have like a piece of land description, which is a 6-part string, which is weird, like 6 to 12, west of 2. So I wouldn't understand it because when I started in the energy industry, they would use it, and I couldn't find an app to easily convert those to geographical coordinates that I can understand. So I decided to build this thing, and I did it for one province, Alberta, and then I showed it to a few people. They liked it. I put it out there. I added more provinces. I did some marketing with it, and it just took off. So and I built it over time. Like it's been 3 years that I'm working on it, and I get their feedback from different users and whatnot. So it has 2 main functionalities basically. Like one, it does search, so you can input something and give you an output. The other thing is it gives you directions, so you can have 2 different points of interest, and it gives you directions like travel time and the shortest path and so on and so forth. And for this specific hackathon, and also I have an API too, like for developers that can use Township Canada API to build applications. So search API, batch conversion API, maps API, and for this hackathon, like my whole stack is on AWS. Like for the web application, it's a mix of EC2, RDS. So it was a good opportunity to migrate those things onto Graviton-based instances, and I was kind of surprised actually when I did that because I did a performance test too, and the performance gain was great, like between 25 to 60%. Depending on what sort of language and framework you use. And for the APIs too, like they run on Lambda and RDS, and the game there was pretty great too. So it was also the fun thing about it was I did an experiment in a month, for example, and did some performance tests, and I basically migrated the whole production into the new basically Graviton instance. It was great. So yeah, that was basically the long version of Township Canada.
Wow, but this sounds like pretty interesting thing, and you have been contributing it to it for a pretty long time. So,
sorry, I can't hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me now? Yeah. So this sounds pretty interesting because you have been contributing it to a pretty long time, and that takes some next level of dedication towards the projects you have built, and you have made it live, and you're still taking feedback on those things. So that's pretty amazing. And Lawrence, could you just tell us about your project?
Absolutely. So, like I touched on a little bit. So what was that?
Did I miss something?
I thought I heard something. But anyways, yeah. So, like I talked about before, the basis of my project kind of was about connecting people that have, like local shops that have a storefront with people that make things but maybe don't necessarily have a place to display them for sale other than, you know, online or something like that, which might not always be practical for like larger items or stuff like that. And kind of where that came from was one of my big passions is community, and I think a lot of people tend to look at small business and local communities as kind of being in like a sort of opposition with technology. And so I've been looking at ways that, you know, how can you make technology partner with those things, right? So this was one area where I saw like a small opportunity to help with that. And so when I saw Squares and Box Hackathon, I thought that could fit really well because one of the main hindrances that I found when talking to different shops about why they didn't have opportunities for local vendors and that kind of stuff to display items was they didn't have a good way to manage the system, and they didn't want those payments to be run through their point of sale system. So I created an integration using Square's terminal APIs and some of the other web payment SDKs to allow those shops to be able to take payments directly on behalf of the people selling the items and would process through their Square account. So it stays out of the shop's point of sale system and then also provides them a convenient way to manage those sales and keep everything in line so they don't have a lot of extra hassle along the way trying to figure out just the logistics of it.
Wow, that's something, that's a useful thing to have, and basically channeling the payment gateway and payment system, it's something which is in a brighter direction taken in terms of payments and like in terms of fintech as well. Dustin, could you just tell us about your project in AWS Gravatar?
Yeah, sure. So, like I sort of described before, my project is used for rendering subsets of geospatial data onto maps. So what this means is that, or I used to work in a job where sometimes a manager might say, oh, I'd like us to be able to know where all of the grocery stores in Belgium are, or something like that. And how you define a grocery store can be different. And then you write all of these jobs that produce, you know, different cuts of what a grocery store might be. But it was still this really slow process where a product manager or a business stakeholder might not be able to see a subset of geospatial data and sort of explore it without having something sort of custom and unique themselves. So I built this tool that could be used to visualize subsets of geospatial data in the browser on a Graviton instance. And I guess the first part of this was making sure that the database was performant. So I loaded in OpenStreetMap, which is like the Wikipedia of sorts for location data, into a database on one of the EC2 instances of this using a Graviton processor. That was, you know, the focus of the hackathon. Did some performance benchmarking to see, okay, relative to you know, the other instances, how does this perform? And then I started thinking about how to build out maybe a wider architecture around this. But at the core, it's really just an API and a database, or, you know, a database that I could tune a little bit that fetches data that, you know, just happens to be geospatial point data instead of, you know, like select star from users where ID equals 1. It's, you know, a little bit more complicated with queries. But yeah, that's about it. You render geospatial data in the browser, API, and a database. Really simple structure, but yeah, sometimes simple works, I guess.
I guess you summed it up pretty well. Like sometimes simple work, and that's what the message we wanted to showcase to the community is that sometimes simple do work, and things doesn't need to be super complex. And simplicity is something which is like a very key part, I feel, when we are speaking about hackathon projects. And so, a general question for all of you, and let's start with Abraham. So, what is your approach whenever you see a problem statement, whenever you see a hackathon? So, like, you just fire up the terminal, or you go into the planning phase, or how do you do it? Like, what's the secret sauce of this? So, yeah.
Yeah, there is no secret actually. Like, I think, like, the first thing that I, focus on is the hackathon theme. Like, what's it about really? Like, for Graviton, it was all about performance. Like, you have to, play with performance, and you have to show something around that. So, for other hackathons, there's always a theme, like machine learning, deep learning. So you can, see that, what you need to do and what you need to play with. And then, ideas, as I mentioned, like, I have some ideas written out. Like, I always think about, the problems that I can solve with technology. Maybe, most of the folks on this call probably like that. So if you have an idea, like in the backlog somewhere, you can just, pick that up. Or if it's not, like, just think about the problems that you have yourself, like personal things that you'd like to do. And you can just, align it with the theme of the, hackathon and just get on with it. I think there's no secret sauce really in that. And in terms of the technology, it doesn't really matter the technology you use. You just want to prototype an idea. So whatever tool that you're comfortable with, like, I don't know, PHP is not cool these days, but if it's PHP or whatever, right? So JavaScript, like, whatever that is, it doesn't matter. And just, just do it and have fun. And that's the good stuff to have fun.
Lauren, and what is your approach? And that's pretty amazing, Abraham. After speaking with you guys, like, I'm so excited to participate in a hackathon. Though I can't even Devpost, but sure. And Lauren, what is your approach whenever you see a hackathon and whenever you see there is a hackathon problem? So how do you approach it?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, like the first thing that I try to think of is just like connecting like an idea that goes along with the hackathon to something that I'm also passionate about. Just because hackathons, like, they don't always have to be a super complicated project, but they do take some time and effort. So like it's important to me to like come up with something that I know I'm going to be like super passionate about doing. It's not going to feel like a drag by the end or anything like that. But then, yeah, as far as like the planning approach to that, like once I have a general idea, I do a little bit of upfront planning, but I think that's one of the fun things with a hackathon too. You don't have to have like this perfect plan of how everything is going to go, and sometimes I think it's kind of nice, not to, especially with a short time frame, but to just get in and get a general plan of your kind of big milestones of like where you see this going, like what do you envision as like the end product, and then kind of diving into it and just letting it flow and adapt and addressing things as they come up. Again, just given that short time frame, it lends itself to that, and it can be kind of fun. Sometimes just kind of do it that way, since your normal job, you're usually used to having to plan everything out very thoroughly beforehand. So.
Interesting. So it's mostly like it's very important on the way you plan according to the problem, and if I am reading this right, like the way you plan according to the problem, and then you start building it. Yeah, if I am reading through this right. And Dustin, could you just tell us about your approach into hackathon? And I guess the plan one is very general, but yeah, would want to listen to yours as well.
Yeah, so I think that I've got a notebook of ideas, and then I sort of think, okay, well, does this theme really match up? And if it does, then I think I try and really focus on like what element of this project I want to make really good. If it's like for Graviton, right, it's performance and it's about using these new processors. So I thought, okay, well, I want to make sure that this idea is viable, and using these new processors will be worthwhile here. Or maybe I can save this idea for another hackathon down the road if it won't be. So I do maybe a day or two of like testing and something, not even code that I'm going to use for the hackathon, just like, just testing, figuring out if this makes sense. Then I think about the core services that I need, and for my case, it was just an API that calls a database, and the database hosted on an instance, and then I try and get those two things up as quickly as possible. And then from there, if I see that it works, maybe even at a small scale, my application hosted all of North and South America, but in the first week or 2 weeks, I was only testing, I think, like New Jersey, so, 100 times smaller than, what it actually needs to be. And then once that's sort of working, I'd say, okay, well, if I get really busy in the next 3 weeks, I wouldn't be upset submitting this. And then as I have time over the remainder of the hackathon, I think about things like, okay, well, maybe there should be a cache for the API so I can add this because I've got some extra time. Oh, maybe I should test out the performance a little bit. Maybe I should, like load balance all of this stuff. But that really just does come after. Yeah, it's all about just, for me, getting to a point where I'm happy and I know, yeah, I'm going to submit. And then if I know I'm going to submit over the next 3 weeks, I'm like sort of motivated to like add in the stuff that I would do if this were like a production thing for my job.
Wow, that's a pretty cool approach. And I guess I think I heard a sound of Slack notification in the back, and I have a question from this, and we have same question in the community as well. So how do you balance your day job and how do you balance participating in the hackathon? How do you guys do that? And Abraham, please answer this, and this is interesting, yeah.
Yeah. The thing about me, like I get bored with my day job sometimes, so I have to do things on the side, and that's why like I have little projects here and there. And I should mention like my day job is very interesting. Like I get to work with different clients, different projects, and it's a variety of things that I need that I get to basically play with. But again, I like to build things too, so that's why. Yeah, so I use like weekends or I don't know evenings and whatnot to be able to hack things together. So as the other folks mentioned, like it doesn't have to be complicated. Like it could be a simple thing that does really interesting behavior. Like it could be a simple app but an interesting idea. And yeah, that's how I do it basically.
And Lauren, how do that's like pretty amazing that you have for finishing this up, like this is a pretty interesting way to balancing out and put your craft in your weekends too. So yeah, and Lauren, how do you balance your day-to-day job and participating in hackathon?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, my day job is always first priority and stuff there. But I mean, there's always, you have free time in the evenings and on the weekends and stuff. And I try to pick doing hackathons at times where I know that like, maybe there's like not as much going on, or I'm going to be like having some like time where I'm away from normal things or just at home a lot or whatever, have a lot of free time. But yeah, I mean, as far as like balancing it, I just tend to, my day job comes first, and then any extra time I have after that, I like to use it to just do more fun projects.
Wow, and Dustin, you want to add something on this? Sorry, I pointed you out.
Oh yeah, no, I feel like it's I feel like since they were my Slack messages, I have to say something. Yeah, no, for the most part, like nights and weekends, yeah, try and like if I have like a sort of lull during work, like I know the next 2 weeks are going to be kind of quiet, good hackathon time. Yeah, aside from that, not much else. It's nice that like, if you like the project that you're doing, then it's not that hard to like motivate yourself to do nights and weekends. At least for me, I'm lucky that I have those free. Mostly free.
Okay.
And I think once you do like a couple of hackathons, then you know what to do and how to do it. Like it takes a couple of hackathons to know the drill, if you will. Like it's going to be easy afterwards.
Yeah, you definitely do get better at going from like 0 to, oh yeah, okay, I can submit something. That's kind of a nice effect too.
Wow. And like, what is the most important one or two things you use in every hackathon, like you participate in? Like, what do you feel that, okay, I'm going to use this, I'm going to make a EC2 instance, I'm going to do that, or I'm going to do that. So like, what are the most important tools you feel you use every time while you're developing a project? Abraham?
Sure. So the most important thing for me is not really technical. It's about writing. Like what I do first thing is to write a few paragraphs. Like what is the challenge? What are the problems that I'm solving? And what is the solution? And what it does to solve the problem? And that gives me some, vision and direction. And I don't get lost. Like if I go sideways, I get back to the basics. Hey, these are the problems that I'm solving, and this is the solution. And I come up with some sort of a draft architecture. Hey, this is AWS, so these are the important pieces that I need to work with. And it doesn't have to be, again, complicated. You don't have to use like 8 different lambdas and API gateways. It could be a simple EC2, like with a Node.js template that you use for all other projects. So that, you kind of speed things up. So if you have that, you just, fill out the blanks and the functions and, get on with it. So I think writing is very important for me. And I think like when you submit the project, telling a good story, increases the chance of winning because it resonates with people when you tell a good story. So I'm a true believer in that too. Like writing your, write out your plan and have a good story to tell. I think those are the two main things. The other things, like the technical side of things, I think that's something that, everybody can handle. Like if you're working with data, SQL, Python, if you're working on the web, JavaScript and your mobile Swift, like it doesn't really matter to me, the technical part. Mostly the non-technical part, I think, from my perspective, plays a more important role.
Wow. So it's not about the tools, it's about how you write the process and how you envision what you're building towards. Lauren, do you have like a same viewpoint, or like do you have a different viewpoint on this, on the tools you think are most important while building a project?
Yeah, I would echo very similar to what was said, but the one thing that I do try to gravitate towards when I'm looking for like tools and stuff is stuff that I'm already familiar with and comfortable with, just because I think that most hackathons you can go a lot of ways with them, right, and stuff, and some do have specific technologies that you're required to use, and obviously in that case you are locked in there, but I tend to gravitate towards just using what I'm comfortable with, and yeah, if I want to learn like a whole new language or something, I usually like start with just like a mini project first and then do a hackathon after I've already kind of got comfortable with just the language. But I think there's lots of hackathons out there for any platform or language you're already comfortable with. You can find hackathons that are applicable.
And what about you, Vincent?
Yeah, for me, it's really just about keeping a record. So, like, especially for the longer ones, I might not want to leave like an instance that could be kind of expensive running for like six straight weeks. So keeping really good documentation of what I do on like weekend 1 or weekend 2 is really important for me. Having like honestly like having a README with all of like in this case AWS, because there's an AWS hackathon, like AWS, S3, CP, whatever, and whatever commands you need to like get your infrastructure up, so that if you come back to it in 2 weeks, you can, not have to spend a few hours just remembering, oh man, where was I, 2 Sunday nights ago, or whatever. And, even though it's a hackathon, like for me, this is a personal thing, and this is where I differ a little bit. I really like defining all of the infrastructure for hackathons as infrastructure as code. It just makes my life a little bit easier. It makes it so that I can take a look at it down the road, like, months later and say, oh man, I remember how I did this. Yeah. And also if I end up not submitting, or if, it ends up maybe not being the right fit, then I can always just have it as a reference. Like, I always want to be proud, or, proud of what I've, like, created, even if it's not, something for a hackathon.
Yeah, so definitely speaking in the vague series of questions I have, because I was going to ask that what is the biggest takeaway of hackathons you generally have, and this is one of the biggest takeaways is just to reference to your own work, and that's like pretty interesting. And Abraham, like if I would ask you, like what is the biggest takeaways from hackathons you generally participate in, and what do you feel about the projects you have developed? Like what is the takeaway in if we participate in a hackathon? What is your viewpoint on this?
Yeah, for me, there are two things that are the most important ones. Like, one is learning. The other thing is, idea validation. Like, when you have an idea, you want to, see if it's worthwhile, you can submit it, and there's a panel of judges who will, validate your idea if it's, something that it's, viable to continue or not. So I use that as an opportunity to be able to say, like, hey, if I'm going to continue this project, or just shut it down and go to the next one. So yeah, that's it.
And Lauren, what's your takeaway in when you participate in hackathons?
Very similar. The biggest is, of course, the learning opportunity. I feel like I would learn a lot, and even if the project doesn't turn out exactly how I want it to, there's so much learning along the way that I feel like I've gotten a lot out of it.
And I guess Dustin, you have shed light on this, and so the biggest takeaway, what do you feel about the biggest takeaway from hackathons you participate in?
Yeah, just having something to reference down the line. Make sure that yeah, I've built something I'm happy with, or something I want to continue working on, or at the very least can reference. Yeah, and then it just makes, like, honestly, it makes your day job easier. If you can just drop in, like 30 lines of code that you wrote for a hackathon. It's like, all right, well, I just saved the day. Yeah, you'd be surprised, like, they make you a better engineer. Like, it's been really good for me for that, I think.
Well, yeah, that's important, because if there is something you could just go back to and you're into day job and you think that you have done it before, all you need to do is just go to the library, pick that book and use it up, right? And it really is a good reference library you create for yourself, if I'm hearing this right. And so, as speaking of your project, I know Abraham has taken his project to the next level. Lauren and Dustin, do you have any plans of taking your project to the next level? Because Abraham has been doing it for, he's been doing it for years. And what is your plan about just on the sake of keeping it into the reference library? Do you have any other plans for that?
Yeah, I think of. Yeah, mine is not nearly as built out as his is. I'm currently beta testing mine. I have just a couple places in my local community that I've been testing it out with, and working as bugs they go. Of course, getting it truly production ready takes a little bit of time when you're just doing it in your spare time. But that is my goal, is to eventually get it to a place where I have all the bugs worked out and in a good, clean, stable place.
Yeah, I'm not sure about this one. I don't think that I'm going to take this one to production. It was fun to build, but I think it would need a lot more work. We'll see.
Okay. So we have a question from the community, and it's do you guys prefer working solo or with a team? So I think I have reached out to you guys, and you guys have you have completely built it on yourself. But what is your preference, and what could be your future preference in hackathons you want to participate in? Abraham?
It really depends. Like if mostly I work solo, but if there's a friend that's free for like the next 4 or 5 weeks, or if my wife is willing to participate in an hackathon, we would just team up and we would just hey, these are the things that we're gonna do. Can you take on this? I'm gonna do this. And it's sort of casual. Like there's nothing set in stone. Like anybody could do anything really in a hackathon. So yeah, I don't have a preference. It just depends on the resources that are available, and the timing of the hackathon and that sort of thing.
Lauren, what do you feel about this?
Yeah, I kind of go back and forth on what I would say. I think that the one advantage that I like about working on my own is it's easier to coordinate and plan with just yourself than with a team. But I think it's a lot more fun to work with a team and get to have like that joint working on just like bounce ideas off each other. I think it makes everybody's ideas better when you can like work in a group. It bounces ideas off people and stuff. So that's a lot of fun. It just if you have the opportunity and some people to work with and have the time to do the coordination stuff, I think that's always more fun.
I guess Dustin, it's your cue.
Yeah, I like to work solo. I think that for the longer ones, it's just it's easier to plan 6 weeks or 2 months or whatever with just yourself. But for short ones, if it's maybe only a week or a weekend, and some friends are available, like that's a lot of fun. It's like really cool just working on something and having an idea, and then just like you come back 4 hours later and someone said, oh yeah, I did this on it. Like, all right, cool, thanks. That's nice. But I don't want to ever ask anyone to hang out with me for 8 weeks.
Yeah, that's a pretty interesting thing. And do you guys are thinking to participate in new hackathons? Like, do you have any hackathons in your mind to participate in?
Yeah. Like there are 2 new AWS hackathons focusing on disaster response and deep learning on new instance types. So I have some plans for that. So let's see how it goes.
Yeah, at the moment I don't have anything specific. Waiting till after the holidays are over to get back into them. So.
And Dustin, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I have the AWS ones are also pretty interesting for me. Yeah, there's one on the new instance, DL something rather, I forget the full name, and another that's using new Amazon service called SageMaker Studio, I think it's called. Yeah, I think it's the same too as Abraham. Yeah, so, and I'm sure there are others, but those are just the ones that I saw on Devpost when I checked last week. And I was like, all right, we'll put those on the calendar.
This is great. This is great. We're getting good participants through here itself. And so 30 minutes actually felt very less because like there are like whole lot of questions I also had, but this was a really fun time to know the winners of Devpost. And thank you so much, Abraham. Thank you so much, Lauren, and thank you so much, Justin, for coming to this. Super glad that you were able to join us. And to the viewers as well, thank you so much for listening to us. And if you want to use all these knowledge you have got from us, you have 2 hackathons, AWS Disaster Response and AWS Deep Learning. So yes, use these skills, what you have learned from the winners of these hackathons, and you could be the next winner. So thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for joining in, and see you again. See you again in the next iteration of the AMA. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, it was fun.